We are on Yud Beis Chet. If an olive-side piece of corpse adheres to a threshold, Reb Eliezer considers the house tamei, whereas Reb Jewish declares it tahor. If the piece of corpse is located below the threshold, it is ruled half and half. If it adheres to the lintel, the house becomes tamei, and Reb Yossi declares it tahor. If a piece of corpse is located inside the house, someone who touches the lintel becomes tamei. If someone touches the threshold, Reb Eliezer considers him tamei, and Reb Jewish says from a handbreadth and below he remains tahor, from a handbreadth and above he remains tamei. If a new window is made for light, its size to spread tumah is the large gimlet of the temple chamber. If some of the window is left the size of the height of 2 finger breadths by the width of the thumb. What are cases in which some of the window is left? A window was boarded up, but the job was not completed. A minimum size for a hole created by erosion through water, small animals, or salt is the size of a fist. If someone decides to use the hole for general usage, its size is a square handbreadth. If for light, the size of a gimlet. Lattices and screens combine to equal the size of a gimlet, according to Beit Shammai, and Beit Hillel says only when the size of a gimlet is in one place. The above list establishes criteria to allow tumah to enter and to allow tumah to exit. Reb Shimon says these are the minimum dimensions to allow tumah to enter, but to allow tumah to exit, the minimum is a square handbreadth. The minimum size of an exterior window is the size of a gimlet. If a house was built outside it, the size of the window is a square handbreadth. If the ceiling was placed in the middle of the window, the size of the lower part is a square handbreadth, and the upper part is a gimlet.
Okay, so now these two Mishnayos over here had me like really confused when I was learning them yesterday, because we learned above in Mishnah Zayin Gimel that that in order that the size in order to open to protect the rest of the openings from tumah is a square handbreadth, and here we're talking about the gimlet, which is a lot smaller. So what's the difference between the two? And Mishnah Base is the one that basically that explains the difference. I was looking at Mishnah Aleph and like breaking my head on it, and then Mishnah Base came and explained it all, making the distinction over here that a window that's just for light and air, that's the gimlet, right? That's the size of the gimlet. But if it's a window that's made not for light but for usage, then it's got to be the square tefach. And that's the difference between the two. Is what is the purpose of the opening? If the opening is just for light, that's actually enough to allow the tumah out and protect all of the other openings. Okay. Unless it's but that's only talking about when you've got a kazayas min mace, right? If you've got an entire mace there, it's going to have to go out through the house. So even if the doors are closed, you're not going to be able to get it out through a little opening. It has to go out through the rest of the house, and therefore, even if the doors are closed, it will spread the tumah. Okay. Gimel hachor shebedelis. Okay. So what happens if you've got a hole in the door, and now you want to know how big is that hole going to be before it admits and or protects from tumah? Okay, Shiram Melo Egrof. It's the size of a fist. Okay, now the fist is just like a window that's made by a person. We saw that in Mishnah Aleph. Okay, and what was the shear of a fist? It was ben batiach, right? And what did we say the size was of the fist?
It says
he had a big fist. So I'm guessing that's more than a tefach.
It's what we're talking. I mean,
and I'm just is the molo egrof, is that more than a tefach or less than a tefach? Because normally we talk about the tefach when that's kind of a standard measure as a tefach. So the fist size is I think is a bigger shear than just a tefach, because it was the tefach, it was the fist of Ben Batiach, the big guy.
Must be a big fist.
Yeah, big fist. Yeah, this is Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Tarfon Omer b'fusech tefach. It says no, it's got to be a tefach just like anything else. You want to see here? No, okay. Shir b'hacharash milamatan or milamalan. If the carpenter left off a piece from the bottom or the top, of the door. So there's a gap below or above. Hegifa or velo merka, or he or a person locked the door but didn't properly lock it, and it was left a little bit open. So he intended to open it to close it, but it was left slightly open. So now, does that door effectively block against tumah? Or if it was closed and the wind blew it open, so it wasn't opened by a person, shiro malo egrof. So that space over there is again malo egrof, is the amount of space that will admit tumah. So if it was just slightly open like that, then it won't let tumah in or out. Unless it was deliberately opened by a person. If it was deliberately opened by a person, then any amount is enough to let the tumah in or out. Mishna Daled. Ha'osem makom lakane vela'aspati velaner. So basically, he made a hole in the wall. Okay, either to put to put some sort of a reed for weavers. I'm not sure what the use case is there. La'aspati is a kind of a nail that the weavers would straighten their threads on, or for a candle. Okay, so he left the space in the wall. Shiro kol shehu kedivre beis Shammai. So any amount of space inside that wall between so basically it's a hole all the way through. So it goes through onto both sides. Any size of that is big enough to admit tumah, says beis Shammai. Beis Hillel omrim b'fosech tefach, needs to be tefach wide, like any other window for usage. However, if it's just a peephole, or something that enables him to speak to the person next door, again, that's or for any other kind of use, also for that is a poseach tefach, and even Beis Shammai agree with that if it's for usage, for any other kind of usage, then there's no machlokes, and Beis Shammai agrees with Beis Hillel that it's a poseach tefach.
Right.
Okay. Mishna Hey, al tefach. So let's say you've got a tefach hole, okay, and but there's something blocking this hole. Now, certain things will block the hole, and certain things will not block the hole, and we're going to see quite a few counterintuitive ones. So let's say you had exactly a tefach squared hole, and pachos mikazayis basar. So you have a half a kazayis of flesh from a dead body is sitting inside that exactly square tefach hole, and inside the room is a rova of bones. So because they're different minim, it's different. Right, you've got flesh in the window and bones in the room. The tumah is coming from the bones, and the flesh is not tameh because it's less than a kazayis. So being that it's a different type than the tumah in the room, and it's itself not tameh, it reduces the size of the window so that it's less than a tefach, and therefore it blocks the window. Similarly, pachos me etzim k'seora. If you have a piece of bone that's less than a barley corn, and memayit al yidei kazayis basar, but you've got a kazayis of flesh inside the room, so the tumah is caused by flesh, and the window is blocked by a tiny piece of bone that's too small to be tameh. That will also reduce the size of the window. Pachos mikazayis min ames. Pachos mikazayis min nevela. What was the all these things that are less than a shiur of tumah. Pachos mikadasha min asheretz, less than a lentil's bulk of a sheretz. Pachos mikabeitza ochlim, less than a kabeitza of food, because food can only become tameh in the quantity of a beitza. If it's less than a beitza, it's impervious to tumah, and therefore it can block the window. If you have, let's say you have wheat growing outside, and it's attached to the ground, so if it were detached, it would be susceptible to tumah. If it were detached and wet, but while it's attached to the ground, it is inherently impervious to tumah. And it's got to be far away from the window, growing far away from the window to enough that you would assume that it wouldn't be cut away. It says this in the commentary. But once it's sticking into the window, that will reduce the size of the window. So kachai, there are a couple of explanations. I think the simplest is to talk about the simplest explanation is spider webs.
Right.
Is that what your translation says?
Spider web, yeah, spider web.
So
A thick spider,
a thick
spider web.
spider web, yeah. So the carcass of a kosher bird that it's an avela, right? It died without shechita. So a dead chicken is lying there, and you just didn't have das to eat it. So therefore, it is not subject to tumas ochle. Now, why? Now remember, bird nevela is only metame if a person swallows it. So it's not so picking up a dead chicken doesn't make you tame. Unlike picking up a dead cat or something that would make you tame straight away, or a dead cow. That's so that has tumas nevela just by carrying, but birds only give you tuma when you swallow it. So and it isn't considered food unless the person actually has das to eat it. But nivlas of a tame, or what about if there's a bird that is a tame bird, and it also died? There we see that it only becomes tame if a person prepared it. He actually made a maser to show that he's intending to eat it or to feed it to a guy. Okay. Yeah, so what we're talking about here is the dividing line between just stam a dead bird and something that's considered food and therefore is susceptible to food tuma. Okay. Or so or he prepared it but without any intention to make it into food. So in all these cases, the obstruction in the window is something that is not susceptible to tuma, and is not of the same type as the actual tuma that is inside the room. Okay, we're going to see tomorrow the things that do not reduce, and it'll be sort of a lot of the converse of these cases. Anyway,
why did it come up that we have to have the das to eat? We have to eat the bird. If we just
no, you don't have to eat the bird. What we're saying is that until a person actually has das, if a person, you're not allowed to have das to eat this bird. It's treif, right? It's an evade. But if a person actually did have that das, then it converts it into food, and therefore makes it susceptible to tuma as a food.
But the other thing, oral animals like cats, dogs, or cows, or whatever, you can pick it up as long as you touch it. Then you tell me.
Yeah, if it was a behemoth, right? If it was not a bird, if it was a mammal or a
I don't understand the reasoning why. I mean, why a bird is different. It's a dead animal.
You're right, but that's the Akasa. That's the way the Torah defined the tumah of a bird, is that a bird only makes you tameh if you eat it.
Okay.
Okay. Good Gimel.
Okay, good Gimel. If part of the tumor is in the house and part of it is opposite the skylight, the house becomes tummy, and whatever is opposite the tumor also becomes tummy. These are the words of Rav Meir. Rav Yehuda says the house becomes tummy, where whatever is opposite the skylight remains tahor. Rav Yossi says that the tumor is large enough that when it's divided in half, it contaminates both the house and whatever is opposite the tumor. They are both tummy. If not, the house becomes tummy, and whatever is opposite the tumor is tahor. If there are two skylights, one above the other, each the size of a square handbreadth, and the tumor is in the house, whatever is directly opposite the skylight remains tahor, and if the tumor is directly opposite the skylights, the house remains tahor. If the tumor is either in the house or directly opposite the skylights, and an item susceptible to tumor is placed over either the upper or the lower skylight, everything becomes tameh. If an item is not susceptible to tumor is placed over the skylight, whatever is below the item becomes tameh, and whatever is above remains tahor. If the skylights are smaller than a handbreadth and tumor is in the house, whatever is directly opposite the skylights remains tahor. And if the tumor is directly opposite the skylights, the house remains tahor. If tumor is in the house and an item either susceptible to tumor or not is placed over either the upper or lower skylight, only the lower story becomes tameh. And if the tumor is directly opposite the skylights and an item susceptible to tumor is placed over either the upper or the lower skylight, everything becomes tameh. If an item is susceptible to tumor, is placed over either the upper or lower skylights, only the lower story becomes tummy. Okay. All right.
Well, that's it.
And we are on to Caleb. Caleb, Chafchet base. A piece of cloth measuring less than 3 handbreadths by 3 handbreadths that was designated to be used to plug a bathhouse, to pour out the contents of a pot, or to wipe clean a millstone, whether it is prepared for use or whether it is unprepared for use, the cloth is tameh. These are the words of Reb Eliezer. Rabbi Yeshua says whether it is prepared for use or whether it is not unprepared for use, the cloth is tahor. Rabbi Akiva says if it is prepared for use, the cloth is tameh. If it is unprepared, the cloth is tahor. If 1 minute is plaster, whether of plaster, whether of cloth or of leather, it is tahor. And Rabbi Yossi says it is tahor. If it made a lugma plaster, it is of, and if it is of cloth, it is tahor, but not of leather. But it is of leather, it is tameh. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says even if it is made of cloth, it is tameh, since it can be shaken off. Concerning scroll covers, whether they are ornamented or not, or whether they are not ornamented, they are tamei according to the opinion of Beis Shammai. Mesillo says ornamented ones are tahor, but those that are not ornamented are tamei. And Gamil says both these and those are tahor.
Okay.
Okay. And we have midos. Okay, base dollar. All the woods that were there were very high, except for the eastern wall, so that the Kohen who burned the Parah Aduma could stand atop the Mount of Olives and direct his gaze toward the Hekel entrance at the time of the sprinkling of the blood. The women's courtyard was 135 amos in length and 135 amos in width, and there are 4 chambers at its 4 corners, each with a length of 40 amos. The chambers were not roofed, and this is how they were destined to be, for it was stated in Keskel, an angel brought me out into the courtyard, and then we passed the 4 corners of the courtyard, and behold, an enclosure at one corner of the courtyard, an enclosure at one corner of the courtyard, and 4 corners of the courtyard were enclosures that were kataros. And the term kataros denotes nothing than the fact that they were unroofed. And what were their functions? The southeastern chamber, it was the chamber of the Nazarim, for they were written Nazarim who would cook their shlamim offerings and shave their hair and cast their shorn hair beneath the cauldron. The northeastern chamber, it was the chamber of the wood, for these Kohanim who were physically blemished would sort out the wormy pieces of wood, and any piece of wood in which a worm was found was disqualified from being used upon the altar. The northwestern chamber, it was the chamber of the Mitzorim. Regarding the southwestern chamber, Eliezer Yaakov said, I forgot what function it served. Abba Shaul says they used to place wine and oil there, and it was called the chamber of housing the oils. It was really smooth, and they surrounded it with a balcony so that the women could watch from the above and the men from below, so they could not be intermingled. And 15 steps ascended from within the courtyard to the Israelite courtyard, corresponding to the 15 songs of ascent that are found in Psalm. For upon these steps the Levim would sing. The 15 steps was not straight, rather they were rounded like half a circular threshing floor. And there were chambers beneath the Israelites' courtyards, which were open to women's courtyard. There the Levium would place harps, lyres, cymbals, and other musical instruments. The Israelite courtyard was 135 amos in length by 11 amos in width, and similarly the Kohan's courtyard was 135 amos in length by 11 amos in width. And the ends of the beam separated between the Israelites' courtyard and the Kohan's courtyard. Eliezer ben Yaakov says there was a step there 1 amo high, and a platform rested upon it. And in the platform were 3 steps, each with a height of half an amo. It is found that the Kohanim's courtyard is higher than the Israelites' courtyard by 2.5 amos. The entire courtyard was 187 amos in length, 137 amos in width, and there were 13 prostrations there. Abba Yosef ben Hanan says, corresponding to the 13 gateways of the courtyard. The southern gateway is adjacent to the upper gate, the kindling gate, the gate of the firstborns, and the water gate. And why was the name called the water gate? Because through it they would bring the flask of water for libation during Sukkot. From Eliezer ben Yaakov says that there was and because there was a stream of water as wide as that which issues from a flask, and the future will emerge from under the threshold of the temple. And opposite the southern gateway is its north, adjacent to the west, the gates of Yekonia, the gate of the offering, the women's gate, the gate of the song. And why was it called the gate of Yekonia? Because through it Yekonia exited the courtyard when he was exiled. And the east was the Nicanor gate. And the Nicanor gate has 2 minor doorways, one to the right, one to the left. And there were 2 gateways in the west that did not have any name.
Okay, that's it. Yeah. A lot of some big Mishnahs there. Okay. What is Zara?
Okay, Gimel Hay. If Gentiles worship mountains and hills, they are permitted, but what is upon them is prohibited. As it is said, you shall not covet the silver and gold that is upon them and take. If Yossi Agili says there goes upon the gods upon the mountains, but not the mountains on the gods. The gods upon the hills, but not the hills on the gods. Then why is an Av Shera prohibited? Because it has been affected by human involvement, and anything which has been affected by human involvement becomes prohibited. Rabbi Akiva said, I will expound and liberate before you every place that you find a high mountain or a raised hill or a green tree, know that an idolatrous object is there. If one's house is joined to the idolatrous shrine and it collapsed, it is forbidden to rebuild it. How shall he do it? He withdraws 4 cubits from his own property and builds. If he belong both to him and an idolatrous shrine, it is judged to be half and half. Its stones, timber, mortar contaminate with tumah, as does the sheretz. As it says, you shall utterly detest it. Rakiva says, as does the menstruate, as says, you shall scatter them afar as the menstruate. Get out, you shall say to it, just as the menstruate contaminates with tumah by being carried, so too an idolatrous object contaminates with tumah by being carried. There are 3 categories of idolatrous buildings. A building which is constructed from the very beginning for idolatrous worship is prohibited. If he whitewashed it and decorated for idolatrous worship or made renovations, one removed what he removed, and if he brought an idol into it and took it out, it is permitted. There are 3 categories of idolatrous stones. A stone which he used from the very beginning of a pedestal is prohibited. If he whitewashed it and decorated for idolatrous worship or he made renovations, one removes what he renovated. If he mounted an idol upon it and removed it, it is permitted. There are 3 categories of asheros. A tree which he planted from the beginning for a purpose of idolatrous worship is prohibited. If he lopped or trimmed it for the purpose of idolatrous worship, when it sprouted, one removes whatever sprouted. If he set an idol underneath it and nullified it, it is permitted. Which is an Asherah? Anyone beneath, and which is an Asherah? Anyone beneath which there is an idol. Reb Shimon says, anyone that they worship. And it happened to Sidon. In Sidon, regarding a tree which they worshiped, they found beneath it a mound. Reb Shimon said to them, inspect this mound. And they inspected it and found an image in it. And he said to them, since they worship the image, we shall permit the tree to them.
Okay. Right. Vamos, Beis Zion.
2 men who betrothed 2 sisters, and neither one knows which one he has betrothed. Each of one gives 2 divorces. If they died and each left a brother, each performs chalitza with them, but with both. If one left one brother and the other left 2 brothers, a single brother performs chalitza with both, and of the 2, one performs chalitza and the other one performs yibum. However, if they went ahead and married them, we did not force them to divorce. If each one left 2 brothers, if each one left 2 brothers, a brother of one performs chalitza with one of the sisters, and the brother of the other performs chalitza with the other sisters, then the 2 remaining brothers may each perform yibum with the widow who received chalitza from the other's brother. If both went ahead and performed chalitza, the other 2 may not perform yibum, but one may perform chalitza, the other may perform yibum. However, if they went ahead and married them, we do not force them to divorce. The commandment for the elders to perform yibum, if the youngest anticipated him, he gains it. One who was expecting a connection with a delayed woman and one who was then freed, or in connection with a non-Jewish woman and she then converted, but he did not marry her. But if he did marry her, we did not force him to divorce her. One who was suspected in connection with another man's wife, they compelled him to divorce her. Even if he married her, he must divorce her. One who brings a bill of divorce from overseas and says it was written before me and signed before me, but may not marry the wife. If he declares he died, I killed him, we killed him, he may not marry the wife. But Judah says if he declares I killed him, his wife may not marry. We killed him, his wife may marry.
Okay, I'm afraid I'm going to have to run, so I'm going to leave Kilaim to you.
We'll start a new one tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll start a new one, correct?
After Kilaim is Shvius, yeah.
Yes. All right. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.